Okay, so this week is Parshas Bahalotcha. And Bahalotcha, Bahalotcha et Hanerot.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand.
It took me a long time to diffuse the stuff. It doesn't say stuff.
Right.
But,
The Ashkenazim.
yeah.
So this week is Parshas Bahalotcha. And in this week's Torah portion, it starts off with God commanding Aharon to light the menorah. Bahalotcha et ha-menorah. When you're lighting the candles of the menorah, and he's telling him how he should be lighting this menorah. And we know that the menorah had 7 different candles on it, 3 on each side plus the one in the middle, so 6 plus the 7th in the middle. And Aaron is commanded, when you're lighting the menorah, make sure you light it until the flame actually lights from its own. So it's not good enough to just light it, but make sure when you're lighting it that the candle's actually lighting up on its own. And of course, the lighting of the menorah is not just lighting the menorah in the Mishkan or in the Beit HaMikdash, but it's what we are all entrusted to do. We are all Kohanim. We are all Aharon. Like where it says, Hevei mi talmidav shel Aaron. Be like the students of Aharon. Ohev shalom, rodev shalom, ohev et habriot, loving peace, pursuing peace and loving everyone. Umekarvan la Torah, loving people and bringing them closer to Torah. So when we light up another person, and that's what we're all entrusted to, we're all meant to light up the menorah all around us. We are all that Kohen that are lighting up people around us. And when we are lighting up a person, we have to do it until the candle goes on its own. The candle rises on its own. Meaning, when you're an educator, or when you're a parent, or when you're a friend, it's not good enough to help somebody until they are completely reliant on you. That you're helping them, but they're still reliant on you. You help them until they are able to do it on their own. The job of an educator, the job of a teacher, the job of a parent is to help the child to learn on their own what they should do and what they shouldn't do, so that when the mother isn't always there, or the mentor or the teacher isn't always there, they understand what they're supposed to be doing. And our job as people is to light up everyone around us. It says that the windows in the Beit HaMikdash were such that it was narrow on the inside and wide on the outside in order to let the light out. Right? Rather than what we usually do, you want as much light to come in from the outside. Here it was narrow on the inside, but wide on the outside to let the light out to the outside. And how is it shining out? Through the lamps of each and every one of us. We are all those lamps, and we are shining that light everywhere. But sometimes we need a little help. We need somebody to light us up, to light that candle in order to ignite us and to put us in the right direction. Interestingly, the menorah also, we said, there was 7 different candles on the menorah. And these 7 candles on the menorah represent the 7 faculties of the neshama. We know that the neshama is chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, hod, yesod, and malchut. So these are the different qualities of, Kabbalistically, of the neshama of the person, different qualities that we all have. And the idea is, you could have a person who's a chesed person, a very giving person, and then you could have a person who's a gevura person, a more inhibited person, a more calculated person. And the idea isn't to make yourself into what you're not, but to serve God with what you are. Serve God with your talents. Serve God with what your qualities are. You don't have to completely twist yourself into a pretzel to change yourself around, but use the qualities that you have and use those qualities to serve God. And that's why the candles of the menorah were all facing inwards to the middle. So as long as you are doing that in a way that's facing the right direction, meaning as long as you're using your qualities in a positive way, facing what they're supposed to be facing, not for your own sake, but for a higher sake, then you're using the qualities in the right way. And that's the point of it, to use your qualities in the right way. So this is how the parsha starts off, Parshas Bahalotcha, talking about Aaron lighting the menorah. Now it's interesting when we look at the different parshiot and the different books of the Torah, we see that things are moving in a very positive direction. We have first the book of Bereshit, which is the creation story. Then we have the book of Shemot, which, okay, this is the time when the Jewish people were enslaved, but then they get out, biyad chazakah, with a strong hand, they're released from Egypt. We're going towards, towards Vayikra, but we're going also towards the Torah. We're getting Matan Torah, and that's what we just celebrated, the holiday of Shavuot, where we were counting, we're trying to lift ourselves up, elevate ourselves spiritually, get to a higher level, and we are now at that point where we're at a higher level. The book of Vayikra is all about the Kohanim and the Leviim and the different services that they had. And then we're in the book of Bamidbar, which is the book of formations, the book of counting, where we counted the Jewish people and their formation in the Midbar. We're ready to move forward to go to the land of Israel. And we have that, Bamidbar, Naso, which is going higher, and then Bahalotcha. And then right in Bahalotcha, we start off with lighting the menorah. Bahalotcha itself means when you raise up, when you light up. It sounds so positive. We're getting there, right? And then you look at the end part of Bahalotcha, and you see this is where the whole downturn starts. From the whole book of Bamidbar, there's a downturn, and the next parshiot continue to go the downturn. What happens there? The people start complaining. They're in the desert. We just had this beautiful experience of Matan Torah, of getting the Torah. We were working on ourselves, getting higher and higher and higher. And we're even lighting the menorah, like, wow, all this light that we're bringing into the world. And then we have complaints and mutiny. And if you look into the next parsha, next week's parsha is even worse. Bamidbar Nasa Balaso Shlach, where they send the Meraglim, and that's when they get to, that's when God says, okay, you're going to be in the desert for 40 years. You're not going anywhere. So this whole positive turn, we're going positive, and all of a sudden, here is where we start having the setback. And if the setback continues in next week's parsha, it even becomes stronger, how we have the setback where we're stuck for 40 years, and 40 years in the wilderness, and even that generation has to die out. They can't go further. Now it's interesting that this setback happens right in the middle of this week's Torah portion, and in the middle of this week's Torah portion, we also have a very interesting phrase, and that is a phrase that we say every time we take the Torah out of the ark. What do we say?
Yeah.
Exactly. Vayehi ben Soah ha'aron. When the Aaron travels, Vayomer Moshe Kuma Hashem vayafutzu oivecha. Get up, Hashem. Scatter your enemies. Right? Come fight for the Jewish people. This is what we say every time we bring out the Torah in the synagogue. And when you look closely in the Torah at this phrase of Vayehi ben Soah Aaron, it's maybe 80 words or so. It's not much. There's parenthesis around it. There's a nun on one side and a nun on the other side, kind of like this parenthesis around it, holding it in. And these parentheses, according to some, are showing that this part, these couple of phrases of Vayehi ben Soah Aaron, is actually an additional book of the Torah. It's its own book. Because how many books of the Torah are there? There's 5. Bereshit, Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Why do we call it a Chumash? From Chamesh. Because it's 5. Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim. Right? Those are the 5 books of the Torah. This is telling us that there's actually this extra book in the Torah. And the part of Bamidbar, till we get to that parenthesis of Vayehi ben Soah Aaron, is its own book. Then we have the Vayehi ben Soah Aaron, which is in the parenthesis, which is its own book. And then we have the part after the end of the parenthesis, where till the end of Bamidbar, which is its own book. So with all these extra parts, how many books now do we have of the Torah? According to this calculation, there are 7. Exactly, there are 7, right? We have the Bamidbar before, Bamidbar Vayehi ben Soha Aaron, and the Bamidbar at the end. Bamidbar is exactly, it has 3 different parts. It's cut into 3 parts, exactly. So yeah, according to this count. And when we count it according to this, we have 7, which is what I just told you when we talk about the menorah. We said there are 7. Why? Because these represent the 7 faculties, the 7 characteristics of the soul, the 7 things that we do. Chesed, Glura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchus. These 7 different faculties of characteristics of a person. And so therefore there are these 7 that represent these 7 different books. And how do they represent? What does it mean that we have this parenthesis in the middle? What is that parenthesis really telling us? What is it? What it's telling us is that up until now we've had this almost like a straight line. We're growing, we're getting to where our destination is. Our destination is the promised land, Eretz Yisrael. We're on our way, we're on track, we're getting there. And suddenly, setback. Suddenly there's a setback. Suddenly there's all these complaints. Suddenly the nation is going, they're rebelling, and there's this mutiny. And what is this telling us? That really every time we have a setback in our own lives, the setback is there for a reason. We feel like the setback is something that's taking us completely in the opposite direction, but really the setback is there for a purpose. In fact, the Rebbe explains, what does it mean when they were complaining about all these things? On the surface value, it seems, what are they just complaining? So they're complaining and complaining and complaining, but when you look deeper at what a complaint is really when a person is feeling an unrest. You're feeling uncomfortable with the situation as is. You don't like the status quo. You're saying, this isn't enough. I want more from life. When you think about your own self and you're feeling this disconnect in a relationship that you're in, or with a job that you have, or with kids that you have, why are you feeling this disconnect? You're feeling there's more to life. I need to find more to life. I'm not satisfied with this as it is. I need to figure out a way to make this better, to make this more. And that's what the complaints were. That's what the complaints, on a surface value, it was completely wrong and they did totally wrong. But when you look deeper, a complaint, a mutiny, a rebellion is really saying, I don't like things as they are. I want something more. If you look at teenagers, and this was always the Rebbe's attitude towards teenagers, how everyone looks at teenagers as, ay vey, you have teenagers like Nebuch, what you're going to go through, right? And the Rebbe saw it as something different. He said, teenagers weren't a matter of just this extra hormones that are going crazy. But he said, what is a teenager? A teenager is this individual who has so much strength, right? They have so much strength, they don't always know where to direct it. But they're looking at the world and they're seeing the inconsistencies of the world. They're looking at their parents and they're saying, oh, you say this, but you do that, right? You're telling me this, but really I see you doing that. They're looking at with idealism at the world and they're saying people are not doing that. People are not practicing that. They're seeing the world and they're seeing everything that's wrong with the world. Because by the time you finish your teenagehood, by the time you become an adult, you get very jaded and very cynical. This is life. Like, what am I going to fight it? This is the world. This is life. This is what you got to do. This is the games you got to play. This is how you got to deal with life, because this is the reality. And a teenager isn't there yet. A teenager is going to say, hold on. What do you mean this is life? And they rebel against this. I don't agree with this. And I'm going to try out all kinds of other things and do all kinds of exploration because I don't like what is. I don't like the status quo. I'm looking for something deeper and something more. Now, often it could express itself in very destructive ways. But the core of the desire, the core of what's pushing the teenager is this desire for more, this desire for more authenticity, this desire for more genuineness. And that's what's motivating them. They don't know how to express it, so it expresses itself often in a negative and a wrong way. But the core part of the rebellion is this desire for more. And the same thing is with the Jewish people here. We are like the teenagers in this situation. And we start rebelling, and we start going against the Word of God because we are looking for more. We're trying to understand more about ourselves, about our relationships. We've gotten to a certain point and we're saying we need more, we need more, we need to understand more, we need to be more. Again, we're expressing itself in the wrong way, but the motivation for that rebellion was this discontent, this unrest, because we're looking for more. And so the parentheses that are in this week's Torah portion, right before it switches to this downturn and all these setbacks, this parenthesis is telling us something. It's telling us that in all of our lives, and it's a very short parenthesis, it's only like I said, maybe 50, 80 words. And that parenthesis is telling us that we all have that parenthesis in our own lives. We all have those brackets in our own lives. We all have those things that are not going the way that we wanted it to be going. We all have this downturn. We think we're going in the right way, up, 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 and all of a sudden we have all the setbacks and these failures and these challenges. And these setbacks are there and we can all fill in our own Torah, in our own book of Torah, what these failures are, what these challenges have been, what these setbacks have been. Because for each of us, it's a different story. But the story is all the same, that it is this setback. You're going somewhere, you're moving forward, and all of a sudden there's this huge setback that's pulling you back. And the message of it is that we need to realize that the setback is there for a reason, that the setback isn't just random, that the setback is there for a reason, the mistake, the fallout, it's all there for a purpose, and the purpose is ultimately to bring us higher. It's ultimately, Vayihi ben Soa Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu evecha, that God is going to be there for us, that we're going to discover God in our lives, even in those setbacks, even in those challenges. And that's what the parenthesis is coming to teach us. Yes?
So when something happens in your life, you think that's the worst at that moment.
Yes.
You had a divorce or something.
Yes.
And then when you look back a few years later and say, well, yeah, I have to go through that stage to have a better life. Or
Exactly.
get somebody new or something like that.
Exactly. I just interviewed someone from my neighborhood. It hasn't come out yet, but you should see this week's interview because it was really good. Another interview. But
Are you going to put it?
I'll post it. I'll give it to Sandy Tzchani. This week's is like phenomenal. But this Sarah Korn from Manhattan, a fantastic story.
I think it was posted.
It's posted on Chabad.org, but not. Yeah.
Ah.
It's this week's. It's on YouTube. But anyways, I was speaking to this other woman, a woman who actually lives in my neighborhood. She's already an older woman. She has 12 children. She's completely religious, from a kulak, and she just moved from Chicago to Pomona. And she was talking about before she was religious. Now she's a religious woman with a sheitel and 12 children and men, and a lot of them on shluchim. But before she got married, she was bullied as a child, and she felt like, you know what, I have to get in with the cool girls. Her parents were not very religious, and she was in public school, and I got to get in with the cool kids because otherwise I'm going to be bullied. So she tried very hard to get in with the cool kids, fell in with the cool kids, and the cool kids were not the good kids, and she fell in with this very bad group of kids. She had her boyfriend was an African American who came from a very troubled home. She got pregnant, she was 17 years old, and he became abusive after she had the baby. And the abuse continued and became progressively worse until it came to a point where she finally realized and finally got the strength to say, I gotta get out. And that was a moment of freedom. And so she was 17 years old with this 6-month-old baby, I mean, her parents were obviously trying to help her in any way that they can, but with this abusive boyfriend who was threatening her in all different kinds of ways. And finally, she told the social worker what he did, and the social worker said, "Okay, we're gonna press charges," and he was put into prison for 24 hours. And she now had 24 hours to decide what to do, how to go about it.
Wow.
And he knew, of course, her parents' home, so she couldn't hide there. He knew all her friends, so she couldn't hide there. What is she gonna do so he doesn't find her? So her brother had, a couple years before that, been going to a mall, and as he's in a mall in Cleveland, which is where she came from, what happens in a mall when you're in a mall? You have yeah, exactly. Bump into a Lubavitcher who wants to put on tefillin, to wrap tefillin on you. And one thing led to another. Her brother put on tefillin, and he got close to the Chabad house. He got close to the people in the Chabad house. So now, when Fruma was in her situation, and she had nowhere to hide, because everywhere they would know, so her mother said to her, "Let's take you to the Chabad house." And they took her to the Chabad house, because that's not where the boyfriend would ever think to look. And she was talking about how, first of all, the fact that she got pregnant at 17, she couldn't go to the shelter because the shelter was only for people 18 or over.
Oh, wow.
And she says, at the time, it felt like at the time, it felt like such a curse. Like, I can't go to the shelter, where am I gonna go? But this is what caused her to go to the, it was a blessing in disguise, exactly. And even the getting pregnant looked like a terrible curse, but it ended up, she actually called her son Yosef Bracha, that you added bracha, and she didn't know at the time but of course everything is divine providence, and he gave added blessing in her life. So the things that we look at as such a terrible curse, she ended up she couldn't stay in the Chabad house. They sent her to Crown Heights, to New York, where she started learning, and she started doing all kinds of, she started learning more about her Judaism while raising her son in a house that people were helping her. And that was when she met her shidduch, right, exactly, who is a phenomenal man and who adopted her son and took him as his own. Yes.
Have you interviewed her son?
I interviewed her son, yes. I interviewed her son, and her son was like, and she said now that her son said his story, the son that was the black, he's black, he's half black, and he is dark. He's a shliach, and he spoke,
really?
he is, yes.
Wow.
And he spoke about his story, and he knew his part, but this was now her part, and she said now she felt free to actually share her part, which she had never shared, even to people who knew. And she ended up living in Chicago. Her next door neighbor was the person who in the mall was putting on tefillin on her brother.
Oh my God, I got it.
Yes. So things are all, and one of the things that she kept saying throughout was exactly what you said, that the blessings are often, what we think of as a curse is often the greatest blessings. The blessings are hidden within the curses, and that's when we see how God is really running the world. So this is exactly what we have here in this week's Torah portion of the Baalotcha. This is the brackets in all of our lives, the parentheses, the things that we're not proud of, the things that we want to forget about, but it's in those setbacks and in those mistakes and in those what seems like a curse that are really the blessings that we have. And this is its own Torah portion. And that's what the 7 is actually there for. And if you look at, I said each of the different books of the Torah represent a different one of the 7 faculties. So if we look at them, let's talk for a second about them. We see Bereshit, which is the beginning, the creation. This is the one of Chesed, which is giving to others. Bereshit is Hashem creating the world, and that's the idea of Chesed, of giving to others. Shemot is Gvura. This is where we were in Egypt, and God took us out with a strong hand, the idea of Gvura, of strength. The next we have Tiferet, which is beauty, and that's the whole book of Vayikra. The Leviim, the Kohanim, the service that they did was this synthesis, this beauty, this different services which combine things that made it very beautiful. Next we have Bamidbar, which is Netzach. Netzach is about persevering, moving forward. So it feels like Bamidbar, we're in the formation, we're ready to move forward, we're ready to go into the land of Israel. It's like the right foot, moving forward, the Netzach, the victory. But then comes Hod, and Hod is humility. The parenthesis that we're talking about are Hod, which is humility. When we have humility in the setbacks of our lives, in those brackets of our lives, when we can face those brackets of our lives with a humility and saying, I have this humility to admit my mistakes, to admit my setbacks. And I also have the humility to realize that even these setbacks are from God. And if they're from God, then there's going to be a positive outcome. When we can do that, then we have the rest of the Bamidbar after the parenthesis, which is Yisod. Yisod means realignment. We can then become more realigned to our goals. We've made the mistake, we've admitted it, we've had the humility, now we could come more realigned with our goals. And finally, Malchus, which is sovereignty, kingship. That is the book of Devarim, where we actually get to our goals, where we get to where we're supposed to be going. Now, if we look at those parentheses, which we said are formed by a nun on each side, like one is a forward nun, the other one is like a backward nun. If we put two nuns together, what letter do we get? A mem. We get the final mem, which is the square, right? We get the mem, and that mem is the letter of Mashiach, of redemption. So once we can come to terms with what we've gone through in our lives, with those setbacks in our lives, those challenges, those difficulties, and once we've approached it out of humility, out of this ho that we're talking about, this humility, and we've then become realigned, we find that Mashiach, that redemptive state within us. We become more redeemed people because we understand what we've gone through was there for a purpose, and we become now realigned people, ready to be redeemed people. So that is really, the idea of what is happening here in this week's Torah portion with the Vayihi ben so ha'aron, that part of it in the parenthesis, the 7 parts of it.
And that could also mean 40 years.
40 years in the desert, yes.
Do you think that our times now today is a setback?
Yeah.
Or
Do you
something
think-
preparing for something else?
The Mashiach is
Well, it's definitely a setback because, the hostages are there. Yeah, it's definitely. But again, we have this concept in Chassidut, which is the same idea. It's called Yerida L'tzorech Aliyah. You have to go down in order to jump up. If you're sprinting, if you're taking this big jump, you're going to bow down, you're going to go lower, and that going lower is going to help you to jump up, right? When you're trying to jump 2 steps back, exactly. And you see this? So, yeah, that
I always say it's like a bow and arrow.
it's like a bow and
The
arrow.
more you take the arrow back, the more you fall back down, the higher you're gonna get
100%.
out of that situation
100%.
that you were in.
Exactly.
So the lower we get to in our lives, like the lower point, that's like from here, there's no lower than that. You're gonna see that you're gonna get much higher than where you were beforehand.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, like the concept of rock bottom, right? An addict has to hit rock bottom in order to get back up.
Right.
So, it's like, but things in life are not just like, it'd be nice if everything was just a straight line. Things in life are not a
I don't
straight
know, it's
line.
boring.
I don't know, I think it would be nice. but it's so, on the one hand, it's a yerida. You look at our life and the world that we're in, and it feels like it's so dark and it's so difficult and it's so hard. On the other hand, you see so many miracles that are happening and so many beautiful things that you would never see. And you see the connection of the Jewish people, how connected people became because of October 7th. And you see the spirituality. I was just listening to something that was saying how it's unbelievable, the spirituality in the land of Israel. People are seeking that. People are looking for connection, for godliness, for Torah, for understanding, for spirituality, for meaning, because of what we've gone through. So, something feels sometimes very dark, and we can't deny that it feels dark, because that would be denying evil, that would be denying the negativity. So on the one hand, it's very dark, but on the other hand, there's also this, even the hostages themselves who were in captivity, the strength that they exhibited, we haven't seen such kind of strength. It's like of biblical proportions. It's unbelievable what they've gone through and how they reacted to it. So you have both. We live in times that are full of good and bad, so mixed together, because we aren't yet in the time of Mashiach where things are going to become completely clarified. So you see the miracles on the one hand, you see how many miracles, open miracles, have been happening, and we need more open miracles, but you see them clearly. And on the other hand, you also see the darkness. So it's all definitely, one thing is for sure, you feel that things are happening in a way that we're not living in regular times. We're living in very special times. And we're seeing very, very special people, very unbelievable people. People who seem like they're not connected to Torah at all, who are exhibiting such strength of the neshama in such incredible ways. And so you're seeing this mixture, and that's really what life is all about. And even in people's personal lives, you see this all the time. If you have any connection with people and you're speaking to people, you see that the suffering that people are going through now, it's unbelievable. There's just everyone has something that they're going through. On the other hand, we also live in we're in very fortunate times. Huh?
Fruitful times.
Exactly. So you have both, and that's, I guess, the mixture of what it is to be in this time and what it is to be who we are, the Jewish people.
Why fortunate?
Why is it fortunate times? Because we're actually seeing miracles in front of us.
Oh.
And we're going to see tremendous, you're right, like, why fortunate? It says that in the Talmud, the rabbis were discussing this time period. And some of them said, leave me out of it. I don't want to be there, because it's going to be so hard. It's going to be such hard times. And then others were saying, I want to be able to see, because what we're witnessing is you're seeing not regular people. You're seeing the godliness so obvious in people. The neshama is so obviously shining so brightly that it's unbelievable to see and to watch. And we're seeing the miracles so manifest that it's like unbelievable to see that in today's time. So on the one hand, that's great. On the other hand, there's all the sorrow as well. So we're in a very mixed time period. Anyone else want to say anything, or should I continue? Continue? Okay, one last thing I want to say, and that is, we said that in the beginning of the parsha we're lighting the menorah, right? So there's actually 3 different parts to the lighting of the menorah. Aaron is commanded to light the menorah, but who can actually light the menorah? It could be any Kohen. It does not only have to be Aaron, any Kohen. Where was the menorah lit? The menorah was lit in the Beit HaMikdash in a part called Heichal, which was not a part that anyone could go. Only if you were a Kohen could you go in that part. Right? There were different parts of the Beit HaMikdash. There were certain parts that only the Kohen Gadol could go on Yom Kippur, the Kodesh HaKodashim. Outside that part was a part where the Kohanim could go, and outside of that was a part that any regular Yisrael could go. But the part where the menorah was lit is a part that only a Kohen could go. However, it says, who is able to light the menorah? Anybody. It doesn't even have to be a Kohen. Anybody could light the menorah. So,
Hold on a second, you said only the Kohanim.
no, anyone could light the menorah.
Yes.
So in other words, but it can only be in a place
Okay.
where the Kohanim could go.
Oh,
Okay, so let's say from here on, only a Kohen could go. I can only go from behind the table, because I'm not a Kohen. But from the table on, only Kohanim could go.
oh,
And that's where the menorah was. But I am not a Kohen, I'm a Yisrael. But I'm allowed to light the menorah.
you're
so
allowed
how
to go
can
in.
you?
So how can I, right?
Yeah.
So, so exactly, theoretically, if I have a long pole, I can stand here, light the pole, and light the menorah from here.
Yeah.
Theoretically, I could do that, okay? And then, when it comes to preparing the menorah, because you have to clean out, every day you have to clean out the menorah, clean out the wicks, prepare the new wicks, that could only be done by a Kohen.
Wasn't
So-
it wax? It was only olive oil.
Sorry, olive oil. Yes, you're right. Thank you for the correction.
Right.
Only the oil. Yes, 100%. But you have to clean out the oil.
Yeah.
You have to clean out the oil and put the new wicks and, prepare it in order for it to be lit. Just like every Shabbat, we prepare the candles. So the person who had to prepare the menorah had to be a Kohen. The person who lit the menorah could be anybody, but the person who lit the menorah, the menorah had to be lit in a place that only a Kohen could go.
What about the Levim?
The Levium were not part of the lighting of the menorah. They were in the Beit HaMikdash. They had a different part, and they were responsible for a lot of the singing. That's what their
really?
responsibility was. Yes, singing and playing the music.
Oh, okay.
So from these three parts of the menorah, we learn something about lighting up another person. What do we learn about lighting up another person? We learn everybody can light the menorah. Everybody has a responsibility to light up another person. Everyone. Don't think, oh, I'm not great enough, or who am I? I'm not a Kohen, I'm not. We're all supposed to be like Havei mitalmidav shel Aaron. Be like the students of Aaron. Go out there and light up people. Do something that's going to light up a person. All of us can do that. However, only the Kohen could actually fill up, clean up, prepare the menorah to be lit. Which means that when you are bringing Torah to another person, when you're bringing ideas to another person,
You have to bring it to the rabbi.
the rabbi, or do it in a way that is according to the Torah. Exactly. We sometimes think we can bring the Torah, and there were many different groups of Jews who felt this way. We can bring the Torah down to people. We can dumb down the Torah. We can make things okay in the Torah. But the Torah says, no. Bring people up to the Torah. And that doesn't mean that you have to judge people. That doesn't mean that you judge them for where they're at. But you make the laws of the Torah, these are unbreakable laws. That doesn't mean you have to do it if you're not ready to do it now. But I'm going to bring the Torah up. I'm going to bring you up to the Torah, not bring the Torah down. I'm not going to dumb down the Torah or make the laws of the Torah such that they aren't true. So only a Kohen could actually prepare it, because only the Kohen knows what is good, what is right, what is wrong. But each and every one of us needs to do it. And finally, when you light the menorah, it had to be lit in the Heichal, in this holy place. Because when you're lighting up a person, you need to do it as far as they can go. Light them up as much as they can go. Make them as holy as they can get. Make them as spiritual as they can get. Make them shine as much as they can shine. Make them help them to use their talents and their abilities so that they're shining not part of the way, but all the way, as far as you can get. Don't feel like, okay, my job is done because I helped a little bit. The menorah actually had to be in the Heichal. It had to be in this holy place, because you need to help another person when you're lighting them up to be as great as they can be, to be as holy as they can be, to be as using their talents and using their abilities and using their capabilities to the fullest, not to be satisfied with, it's okay, it's not the Heichal, it's not so good. Yes.
Is it also part that we're supposed to be all lagoim?
Yes, 100%. And in fact, the Rebbe talks about this, and he not only or lagayim, 100% we are supposed to be all or lagayim. Lighting up means everybody around us.
Yes.
But the Rebbe actually says specifically, and when he has this talk, that women are the ones that are specifically the Kohen. We are the Kohen of our own families. We're lighting up the families. We're lighting up our children. We're lighting up, and we have that ability of really lighting up people. And this is talking specifically to us, obviously to everybody, obviously to all men, to all the Jewish people, to be that Or L'Goyim, but even more so the women have this special ability of lighting the candle. And we know that in the Jewish home, the menorah resembles the Shabbat candles, that we light up those Shabbat candles, and we light it up for bringing that spirituality down into our homes and into our world. So this week's Torah portion of Bahalotcha teaches us about lighting up another person, lighting up each other, lighting up ourselves, lighting ourselves up to the greatest ability that is possible, and also realizing that even in the parenthesis, even in those mistakes, those setbacks, we have the ability of bringing light there too as well. As long as we have the humility to recognize what we've done, and as long as we have the humility to realize this is all part of God's plan too, and the setbacks themselves are something that is going to bring out Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha. God is going to fight for us and bring us, fight against the enemies, fight against the negativity, fight against the darkness, and actually bring us to where we are meant to be going, to the promised land and to the era of Mashiach, that redeemed state in all of us, where each and every one of us can actualize our fullest potentials.
Wow. Amen.